So some of you asked how you should be labeling your plans, and there's a couple different ways to do it. Usually, if you are passing the plan off to someone else to install, clarity is the name of the game. Since most of you, if not all of you, are doing your plans for you, as long as you can understand it, that's great. And in the context of this class, as long as I can understand it, everything will be good. So one way to do it is by using leader lines. So I've done a little bed here and I've just called out what the plants are. So you bring the leader line down. Here's a leader line. Here's my plant name and here's the symbol. So you bring the leader down. Typically you bring it into the center of the symbol, or very, very close to the center of the symbol like I did here, right? So it's not quite touching, but almost. So that way there's no doubt that I'm referring to this bank of plants. And I know they're all the same because they have the same graphic symbol, and then the label is over here. For this symbol, because it's so complicated and busy, to drag this leader line into the plant symbol, it would just get lost. So again, clarity is the name of the game, so I ended it right before I got to the symbol. But with this one, I brought it straight to the middle. This one brought it straight to the middle. I bring ground cover leader lines into the ground cover mass, if that's how you've drawn like a mass, and you could do that for ground covers or perennials. Or if you've drawn them individually, you just need to tag one. Now typically we would, in a row of plants or a grouping of plants, we would want to label ideally an end plant. So either this one or this one. But if I dragged my leader line through the ground cover, that gets to be confusing. And if I brought this one label over here and had it labeled over here, just compositionally that would look a little weird to have all my labels here, except for this one oddball is going to be way over here. So I kind of want to cluster them as much as I can without having to draw leader lines through other plants. Sometimes you have to do that. As long as you can do it in a clear way, that's fine. So some other little tidbits, it always helps to come in and thicken up the very end of the line to make it read easily, saying this is where this line stops. It's particularly helpful if you're bringing it into ground cover massing. You've got some other squiggly graphics that can help as well. And then for you guys, just labeling the common name is fine. If you're doing designs for others, I would always have the scientific name and the common, because sometimes people have different plants for different common names, right? So, or different common names for different plants, so that can get confusing. Now, if you've drawn out your symbols individually like this, well, obviously you just count them up and then you add the quantity, right? So there's 8 Shenandoah switchgrass here. There's 3 shamrock hollies. There's 20 grasses here, and you can see that they're not drawn out individually. I've just done a mass. So if the plants would just grow together and read as a mass in the landscape, there's no need to draw them individually. That's too time consumptive. That's not how the eye would perceive it. So just showing it as a mass is fine. I could have done that for this mass of grasses as well, but I like this symbol and I like it compositionally. This makes for a really pretty drawing. And I'm not putting in a bunch of those grasses. If I had, 25 little blue stem, I'm probably not going to do this kind of graphic. It didn't take me long, but it takes me certainly longer than to just do an outline of that mass, right? So if we go back to this mass, if you want to know how many plants are in there, I'm doing 1 square equals 1 foot again, and I've said that there's 20 strawberries in there. Well, how did I come up with that? I said I want to space my strawberries at 12 inches on center, so that's a little tight because they spread so readily, but let's just say I'm planting them a foot apart, right? And so they grow together, they fill in. You can dictate how far apart you're planting things. So if you want things to fill in quicker, you put them closer together. If you want them to, like if they spread a lot, you put them farther apart, right? So I said 12 inches on center. It also just makes it easy because that means there's 1 plant per square foot. And so if we do this, look at this graphically, that just makes sense. So if I've drawn, and I just blew it up so you could see it a little bit better. But if this square represents 1 square foot, so 12 inches by 12 inches, and we're saying one whole plant fills up that square, right? So that's what one plant per square foot would look like. But now let's say you're putting in something smaller, or you want to really have it fill in much faster, and you want to do plants on 6-inch centers. How many more plants would that be? Normally people would say, oh, well, you just double it. It's going to be twice as many. But that's not the case. So you actually quadruple the amount of plants, right? So if you're, watching your budget, this would, really jack up the cost. So if we take that same square foot, but now we subdivide it, so we've got 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches. So it's still the same square foot, but you can see that we could fit in 4 plants per square foot. So you would just come up here and you calculate how big that is in square feet. And all I did was, you can break this up into like little squares and triangles to measure. But I just said, okay, it's about a 2-foot bed and it's about 10 feet long. So it's 20 square feet. So it would be 20 strawberries at 12 inches on center, or 4 times that if I'm doing it at 6 inches on center. Okay, so that's how you do like quantities. But most of the time, I think for what you're going to be doing, you're going to be drawing the individual plants, and you can specify the quantities there. I like it done this way, where it's, you have the quantity first, and then the name is just very clear. But again, whatever makes sense to you and whatever's clear. So here's one way. If that is too rigid for you, you can do the same thing, but you can do curvy lines. There's nothing that says a leader line has to be straight. You see that all the time. It's the most common. But most of the beds we're designing, they're looser, they're informal, so it's perfectly okay to have them curved like this. And you could end the leader line with the same thickened up end if you want, or you can do these little arrowheads, right? And I don't like to end it with just an arrowhead because that gets lost within the symbol, so I just thicken up the arrowhead. So same thing, I pulled this almost to the plant symbol because it's too busy to bring it in here. I pulled it almost to the center of this mass, and again, these are drawn the same, so it's obvious that these 3 are the same. If it wasn't clear, you could always connect those with another line, saying almost connecting dots to dots, but you leave a little bit of a gap, and that makes it easy to read. So you can always show a grouping this way, and that way there's no doubt that those 3 plants are the shamrock holly, right? So same thing, 6 butterfly weed, and you can just see that I've just really changed up my leader lines. So that's another way. Now, let's say your design is really plant heavy and you don't have room to do a lot of direct labels, right? That's what I call it when you're directly labeling like each plant, right? I think that's the clearest way. But sometimes you can't label the drawing and keep it really clear. So in that case, keying out is perfectly fine. So in this case, I've just numbered my plants. And when you do this, you want to have it go either clockwise or counterclockwise as much as you can. Don't say I'm going to make 1 over here, 2 over here, 3 over here. You don't want to make the viewer have to hunt, right? So they should be as ordered as possible. And I just did clockwise. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 is over here. Then you have a little reference table. You could just have a listing. So 1 American Beautyberry, 2, 3 Shamrock Hollies. And I stopped because that looks really confusing. You might be, in a hurry at the nursery, or you're, exhausted from the heat and you get mixed up and you buy the wrong quantities. So in this case, it might be better to say, you do butterfly weed, and then you do the quantity at the end in parentheses. So we said 6. And that just separates out the numbers, and that might make it a little bit easier. Whatever method you do, just be consistent all the way through your drawing, right? So you could just list them out like this, or if you wanted to get super fancy, and you could type this up if you want, you have all the numbers keyed to your plan in the first column, then you have your plant name, then you have the quantity, and if you wanted to add the seasonality, that would also be fantastic. So you don't need to have a plant list and then a separate seasonality graphic, you could just combine it all into one, right? And I have my face-to-face students do that all the time. And you could type that up and add it, or you can just do it by hand. That's fine. I like doing these little squiggles by hand. If the drawing is hand done, it just makes sense to kind of keep everything the same, but whatever floats your boat, right? So have fun with that. Good luck.